My colleagues, Joey Gaines, Sandra Flowers, Kathy Sylvia, and Becky Boland are here. I see some of the local elected officials, Gina Napolitano, Lynn Segley, and Susan Taylor, if I missed anybody else, from Newport. Also, another notable individual in the room is our newly elected freshman Senate, Dawn Oyer, over here. Welcome. And then in the back, I'd be remiss if I didn't notice my own city manager, Mr. Joseph Nicholson. Thanks for coming down. No, Jen, how are you? I'm sorry. Rep. Donovan? Thank you. I apologize, Rep. Nice to meet you.
Just raise your hand if you're not an election official.
Yeah, that's a problem with trying to name them all. But in any event, tonight's forum is designed to be an interactive forum. We'd like to hear from the people in the community, because who would know better from this various communities, the needs of the separate communities, but from you folks who actually live or have students in the system or work in the schools as teachers or parents or just the taxpayer who lives in the town and what you really would like to see for your own community. So this is designed to be just that type of forum, and we really hope that we can have some good interaction here. I'm going to pass the mic over to our treasurer, Seth Magaziner, and he'll start off the show. We also have with us, we have Mr. Wagner, the commissioner of the schools in the state of Rhode Island. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for coming, and I'll just say, not only to all the elected officials, but also to the district and to the school, thank you for hosting us here today. This is the beginning of what I think will be a very long and very in-depth process. As most of you know, there was a report that was released a few weeks ago on the state of Rhode Island's school facilities. Commissioner Wagner is going to give an update and an overview of that study in a minute. But it won't come as a surprise to anyone that the studies show that there's some really significant need when it comes to Rhode Island's K-12 facilities. Every child in Rhode Island deserves to go to a school that is safe, that is warm, that is dry, and that is equipped to train those students for 21st century learning, to enter the workforce with the skills and the knowledge necessary to compete in a 21st century economy. Unfortunately, what we've seen from this study is that too many of our school buildings don't meet those standards. Too many of our school buildings in Rhode Island have serious safety deficiencies, and too many of our school buildings don't have the type of equipment and the type of facilities necessary to really prepare our kids the way we should be for the modern economy. And I am a former public school teacher myself. I taught 3rd and 4th grade in an older school building that was falling apart, where we had lead and asbestos and an HVAC system that was never working the right way and all of that. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that facilities matter, and the condition of school facilities absolutely has an impact on learning outcomes. And it has an impact on learning outcomes. It also has an impact on morale of the students. I think even from a young age, I taught little kids, even from a young age, if kids are going to school in a building that is not in good shape, they know that, and they know what that means. And it impacts their motivation and their willingness to really do the work and to be invested in their own education. So we have to get serious about this. We have to think big. And as I said earlier, this is the beginning of the process. This is not the end. We're not coming to you with a plan ready to go. The idea is that we want to have a series of public forums like this. We want to consult with experts. We want to look at what other states do, because we don't always need to reinvent the wheel. And our charge is to come up with a plan to make significant improvements to the state of K-12 buildings in Rhode Island, to come up with a plan by December. That is our charge. That's what we're working toward, and we're doing that because we have to. We have no other choice. So this is a open session. I don't plan on doing much more talking than I've already done. This is really a chance for us to hear what's important to you and what ideas do you have and what are the things that we should be considering as we go through this work. The final things I would say, just from my point of view, are it's not just about spending more money. We may need to spend more, but it's also about spending smarter and making sure that the public money that we do spend is going to the right places. It's going to the places where it's needed the most, it's going to the places that are going to have the biggest impact, and that we are managing our facilities and managing our spending in a way that is efficient. So that's part of it. Another part of it is, the understanding that we all have an interest in seeing Rhode Island's kids succeed, and because we're facing such a big problem, everybody's going to have to step up. This isn't going to be all on the cities and towns, or all on the districts, or all on the state. This is going to have to be a team effort, and something where we're all going to have to make this a priority. So I look forward to hearing everybody's feedback today. This is the beginning of a conversation, but a conversation that we need to be having, and a conversation where really we have to act with a sense of urgency, because as you'll see from some of the results of the study, some of these facilities need work very urgently, and we really can't wait anymore. So that's to sort of tee us up, and turn it over to Commissioner Wagner to tell us a little bit about what's in the study.
Great, thank you, Treasurer, and thank you to you and your team for being just such important partners in this work. You just bring a level of expertise that will truly make this project more successful. The governor will be joining us shortly. She's en route, but my role is just to give us a bit of a technical level set. You may have reviewed the report already, or you may have reviewed the materials that we've posted, but just for the purpose of this conversation, we just wanted to do a technical level set. So on this next slide, the study that we released a few weeks ago was commissioned by statute through an action of the General Assembly. And the intent and the wisdom of the General Assembly was to say, hey, we know that we've got to consider an investment, but in order to do it, we need to have a comprehensive set of data and set of information that is done by an independent party, and that all schools are compared to an objective, independent standard. We had done a gathering of information, self-report, so to speak, from the school districts a few years ago, and we got a number that was similar of an order of magnitude, but in order to proceed, we wanted to get that kind of independent third party, all of our schools held up to the same standard, aggregated across the report. And the work started in January 2016, and it took some time, of course, to get through all of the 300 plus buildings, and then some time to gather the data, check the data against the people who are working in the school districts, and come out with the report. Next slide. You'll see at a top line, we talk about priorities, priority 1, 2, through priority 5. And priority 1 and 2 is, as the treasurer mentioned, this criteria of warm, safe, and dry. So either priority 1, something that is mission critical, just impacting the functioning of the building right now, or priority 2, something that's pretty darn close to that, but isn't quite the level of urgency that a priority 1 is. But across priority 1 and 2, that's the stuff that's impacting the morale and productivity of our students and our teachers day in, day out, whether or not they feel good or not good about coming to the building, and also whether or not they're distracted in their learning or in their teaching by conditions like the soundness of the roof or the quality of the air or those kinds of things. When you total up those projects statewide, it comes to about $630 million. So when we're thinking about a strategic investment, at one end of the estimate would be that number to get to all of those priority 1s and 2s. At the other end, the larger number, of course, would be if we wanted to tackle all of our buildings, bringing them to an aspirational standard. So not just good, but really where we would be proud to send our kids every day, and where would we be proud to show outsiders the kinds of facilities that we have aligned to 21st century education. That's what we would hold as an aspirational standard. That would get us to about $2.2 billion. So when we talk about the range of the investment, at least from the perspective of the report, we're looking at somewhere between the $630 million and the $2.2 billion. Next slide. This slide, and we will post this information if you're interested in getting to read it in more detail. But this just summarizes to give you a flavor of what each of these priorities are. Priority 1 being things that I referenced before, mission critical. Priority 2, it's impact in the educational work of the school, but it's more of an indirect impact. Priority 3 gets at things like efficiencies, like are we spending more than we should be spending on heating and cooling and lighting and those kinds of things. Priority 4 is long-term improvements, the hardware and infrastructure, the insides of our buildings. And priority 5 are more aesthetic concerns. So some communities have looked at their numbers, for example, and they might have a distribution that's heavy on priority 1s and 2s, or some communities might actually be in better shape on priority 1s and 2s, and the numbers that the state is estimating are actually more than priority 3, 4, and 5. So the story in each community is going to be slightly different. If you look at the next slide, and this is a really important picture to think about, this gives us a sense of what happens if we either continue to do same as we've been doing for the past few years. So for the past few years, we've been allocating approximately $80 million a year to go toward debt service for previously funded projects or new dollars for new projects. So $80 million a year. If we continue to do what we've been doing, it's the red bar at the bottom. So you'll see on the left-hand side of that red bar is roughly the $2.2 billion, and as you go 10 years out to the right of that red line, the number goes up. So with what we're doing right now, our problems will continue to grow. We're not spending enough to even stabilize our current set of challenges that we have. So if we continue to fund, $80 million a year is a lot of money, but if we continue to fund at that level, our problems will grow from $2.2 billion to roughly, I think it's about $3.6 billion over that 10-year period. The green line to the top of that is what happens if we do nothing. So if we do nothing, that is the growth over 10 years of our problems if we do nothing. So this just gives us a sense of the urgency and the need to be decisive, because if we wait a year, the number goes up. If we wait 2 years, the number goes up. If we wait 10 years, the number goes up, as you're seeing on this slide. Next slide. We wanted to be very transparent about the data, and we also wanted to have a process. As communities continue to make investments, we've already had communities that have said, hey, you finished your survey 6 months ago, and we did stuff since then. So we have a process to continue to update our numbers. It's an addendum process, so if anybody says they think our facts are incomplete, just tell us what you think should be the right information. We'll continue to update the reports, because the last thing we want to have happen is for communities to have just arguments over the numbers. We need to have an objective standard. So if we're missing something, you've actually invested in something, we didn't catch it because it was a year ago, tell us and we'll update our report. But we also want to be very transparent about the data. So if you go to our website now, you can drill in on any school, any district in the state. You can do school by school, district by district comparisons. You can sort on all sorts of variables. So we tried to design something with our partners at Jacobs. We tried to design something that's transparent and that is useful to help drive your conversations around your kitchen table or your conversations around your school committee table. We want to make this information useful to you. And then for those of you who want, you can download the data as well into your own spreadsheet right off the website. And if there's something that you want as far as the data, that to help drive a decision at a local level that you can't get directly out of the website, just contact us and we'll be as helpful as we possibly can be. But we wanted to make the data not just static, but also to continue to change and as transparent as possible. Next slide. This just gives some pictures of some challenges across the state. These were picked just to be illustrative of the range of issues. One of the main takeaways for us around this is not an urban versus suburban challenge. This is not a north of the state, east of the state, west of the state, south part of the state. This is something that occurs in every community in our state. As I said, the distribution may be different. Some communities may be more heavy on priorities 1 and 2, some more on 3, 4, and 5, but everybody in the state, I think literally everybody in the state has at least some priority 2 projects. Almost everybody has priority 1 projects that they have to invest in, and everybody can continue to make their facilities stronger moving forward, because because as I said before, every day that we wait, our facilities continue to age, because all facilities continue to age. So we have just a range from piping to plumbing facilities, to ceiling tiles, to staircases, to boilers, just to give you a flavor. Next slide. Since we're in Newport County, we just wanted to give you a sense of what the need looked like in Newport County. There was some news about Jamestown this morning where they were concerned that our numbers didn't reflect the severity distribution that we talked about, because some of their numbers are more in the priority 3, 4, and 5 range as opposed to priority 1 and 2. So like I said, every story will be slightly different. But these are the Newport County numbers that we tally across the 5-year need for Newport County. It's about $241 million. 5 years is an important milestone to keep in mind, because even with making improvements, the facilities will continue to age. So we have to think about total 5-year costs. So that's what this chart represents. And then I think the final slide is, as the treasurer mentioned, we have a charge, the governor signed an executive order to pull together a task force to meet over the next couple of months. We've already started meeting the next couple of months. It's a task force that's representative of all of the various stakeholders across the state. They really have to help us, and listening to feedback, including sessions like this, help us distill, okay, we get the report, we get the numbers, but how much do we think we can take on over what period of time? So what does a 5-year goal look like, for example? What does a 10-year goal look like? And what are the prioritizations that we should think about? Should we prioritize priorities 1 and 2? Should we think about our programmatic needs for things like early childhood, career education, science and technology, engineering, the arts and math education, things that are more facility dependent? Should we start thinking about the number of buildings that we have? So maybe we have multiple buildings that maybe, without impacting the identity of the community and the mission of the school, maybe 2 buildings could be combined into 1 building. Not that we would decide that at the state level, but if the numbers indicate that, should we put incentives for communities to make those kinds of decisions? So that's a sense of the priorities that we need to think through. Our charge is to get our recommendations to the governor by December, so that can inform a budget submission to the General Assembly at the time that the session starts in January. As the treasurer mentioned, this is not just about being bold, but if we're bold but we're not smart at the same time, we could find ourselves in the same situation 15 years from now. So we have to think about, how do we get ourselves out of the spot that we're currently in? How do we spend the money in a wise way that reflects the values that we share across the state? And equally important is, how do we ensure that we continue to invest in those facilities once they are brought up to standard, so we don't find ourselves in this kind of situation moving forward? And most importantly, especially for an evening like tonight, we need to hear from you. We will be smarter if we hear from more people. So tonight we'll, of course, any and all feedback, and there's an email address. If you think of something later, or you want to send it to your friends and family, you can send us feedback as well if you're not here tonight.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. So, good evening. My name is Colleen Burns-Tremaine. I'm superintendent at the Newport Public Schools, and I'd like to welcome all of you to this evening to talk about this very important discussion about our facilities and where our children learn every day. I have been given the illustrious task of monitoring the audience. So I am the rules setter for tonight, and I will share those rules with you. Going forward, we have about an hour and a half. Please raise your hand, and I'll call on audience members and try to keep it moving around the auditorium as quickly as possible. When called on, a runner will come with you and come to you and bring you a microphone. The runner will hold the microphone. It's very important, all right? Please state your name and school. Constructive comments, please. Please remember, this is not a Q&A. This is to hear what you're thinking and what you believe is best, or what you want to share about the facilities and school facilities going forward in your community, island-wide, whatever. Also, please keep it brief so we can get to as many people as possible. Please keep the topic to the school facilities this evening, and please let's all use our best behavior. I'd also like to recognize at this time my colleague, Superintendent Rosemary Krager from Middletown. Welcome. All right, so any questions? Anyone want to be the first? Okay, we have a hand up. There we go.
Okay, but I probably don't need the mic, but.
Well, I think they're taping this, so they may want the mic, so thank you.
Thanks. My name is Sheila Rindeck. I am not a current teacher or anything like that. I'm retired, just a taxpayer. And I know you said this is not Q&A. However, I just have a couple of questions, and you alluded to this a little bit. What would be the major impediments to making all of Rhode Island one school district? And you mentioned consolidation. What are the impediments to that? And as you said, would the state, do you think, entertain incentives to accomplish that? And we, not too long ago, moved from Illinois, where sin taxes are huge. And if you don't know what that's tobacco and alcohol. And we have the car tax here, and we're just wondering why there is no tax on alcohol to help increase the state budget for things like schools. And I know there might be a huge history to that, and I don't want to waste a lot of people's time with that, but if that's just never going to happen, fine. If it is going to happen, that's fine too.
Yeah, so I'll start with the first part. So I get the question all the time about the number of school districts. School consolidation from the point of view of governance is, of course, extremely complicated with a long and proud New England tradition of independent municipalities and so on. So there would just be a lot of thoughts from local elected officials, statewide elected officials about the wisdom of that idea. In addition, school consolidation just by data typically does not produce the kinds of cost savings that people think it should produce for a variety of reasons. So what we're focused on is not so much the governance consolidation of schools as formal entities, but how can we support partnerships between schools amongst themselves and also between schools and external partners to make sure that when we're spending dollars, we're coordinating as much as possible, we're getting as much efficiencies as possible, not just for back-end services, but also for front-end, teacher and student-facing services. And how can we make sure that we're smart and efficient in how we're operating those schools without necessarily getting into the nitty-gritty of combining or not combining schools, which may not produce the cost savings that people think it would.
Yeah, if I could try to answer your question, but then I'm going to ask a question of you all as well. One of the things that I think is really great about this report is that in addition to cataloging all of the repairs that are needed in the buildings, it also shows the how full or how empty each school in the state is. And there are a whole list of schools that by this methodology are overcrowded, and there are others that are potentially undercrowded. And I think that could be useful information for school districts going forward. I'm open to ideas, so I want to hear from the crowd here. My instinct is similar to Ken's, which is that it may not make sense for the state to mandate, a consolidation of different buildings, but I think it's an open question. Should there be, incentives? Should there be incentives if there's a district or two districts that have two schools that we know are half full? Should there be some sort of a funding bonus from the state if those are combined, or some sort of a, maybe what's the opposite of a bonus, a penalty, I guess, on the aid if you're just maintaining the status quo with two empty buildings. This would be my question to all of you. I want to hear that feedback. I tend to agree that state mandates probably don't make the most sense, but we do have this great information now where we know which schools are 60% full or 80% or 120% in some cases. I'd be curious to hear from everybody here what would be the best way for us to use that information. So that would be my question to you and to all of you. Just real quick on the sin tax question. We do have some sin taxes in Rhode Island already. We just raised our cigarette tax again, for example. I think when it comes to school facilities, all options should be on the table. So tax or some other form of revenue that we should be looking at if this is something that you all think is a good idea. We're in the brainstorming stage, so I'd love to hear from everybody here.
Any other, there's a question, Ms. Johnson.
Hi, Jennifer Jackson, Newport School System. Question/point. We have the beautiful new Pell School, which was recently built 5 years ago, and it is overpacked with children, and we ran out of space, which as a taxpayer and a parent is heartbreaking, because it's right in my backyard. When it was being built, a lot of people were speaking like it's not big enough. Oh, statistically this, and this. So we're facing the problem of a brand new multi-million-dollar school with great technology, beautiful, looks beautiful, but it doesn't help our community. I look at it as not in the sense that it's a total waste, but it was a waste of our funding, because now here we are 5 years later trying to figure out where to put our children. And it's like the buildings that we still have aren't up to code, so therefore we can't use the existing buildings because they're not up to code. And I don't want us to move forward, well, I do want us to move forward, but not end up in the same boat. And it's, when we think about reforming, we have to think about growth. And that is one thing that hopefully Rhode Island will get back, because we dropped for a while, but I hope our population growth does come back as jobs come back. And then my other point was that after we fix it, how are we going to maintain it? Because once we fix it, we have to keep the funding available to maintain. Hence, if we don't, we're going to end up in the same boat that we are again. And I graduated in this school back when I graduated. And
Last year.
yeah, last year. Thank you. And it looks exactly the same as I walked in here, and I was like deja vu. It was exactly the same. So in doing that, we also have to think of budgeting long term to make sure we maintain the needs of our children and the facility. And my last point, I'm sorry. When I moved to Louisiana, they had school committees per parish. So, you know, something to that aspect opens the door for those kids that parents might have to move a lot because of job situations. It makes the transition for the children easier, and not only that, it saves money for the district, because the money has one superintendent, which, you know, I don't want to knock anybody, but, you know, we're able to spend more money towards our children's education, which, kind of off the subject, I don't think we spend enough on. Our children are struggling, and I think we don't have the workforce ready because we're not focusing enough on the education. We're focusing too much on bringing jobs. We'll bring jobs, we don't have the children educated. It's a double-edged sword. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We should probably give the governor a chance, if I could first, to Jennifer's points. I think the point about maintenance is really important, because we don't want to do a big program and spend a whole bunch of money and find ourselves back in the same place 10 or 15 years from now. So I agree completely. And I think one of the things that we should look at is, in other states, there are protocols that they have to make sure that there is a certain level of ongoing maintenance that the districts do. So I think that's something that we can get a little smarter on. And I would be curious to hear from other folks in Newport about the experience with the Pell School, because I think it's an interesting one. There is a lot of talk about whether there should be more consolidation of buildings into other communities where that may make sense. And I'd be curious to hear what the lessons were learned here, what worked and what didn't. It sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, one of the things that maybe didn't is that you know, the state and others didn't account for the fact that when you build and open a beautiful new school that's like top of the line, you may have had declining enrollment in the past, and now more people are going to want to send their kids to go to school there, and you have to account for a rebound in that enrollment. So that's one lesson. But if there are other lessons that you think we should take away from the Pell School experience, let us know.
Welcome, Governor. Come on.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. It's great to see everybody and have everybody engaged, and all the elected officials who are here. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it very much. So I'm not going to reiterate what's already been said. I mean, we're here to listen, and I love your comments. Actually, that's why we are here, because we need to hear from you. This is a once-in-a-generation type investment. You know, we're talking about, you know, maybe $1 billion or more, rebuilding our schools for our kids. And so we have to get it right. And we can't wait anymore. You know, it's like our roads and bridges. It's like your house, actually. The longer you wait, the more expensive it is. And we put a lot of money into Band-Aids, and sometimes you spend more money in the long run. So what we're trying to do here is say, it's not okay that so many of our kids go to schools that are not safe, not dry, not equipped for 21st century learning. We can't afford not to do this. And therefore, we have to do it the right way. You know, we're not going to do this in a year or two. It's going to take us 10 or more years to be able to make these investments. And we need a statewide plan. We need to invest more, and we need to be smarter about how we invest. And we need a plan for maintenance. You're exactly right, Jennifer. We need a plan for maintenance. We're not going to put this money in and then do the same thing all over again, which is, you know, watch the decline of these buildings. So we need a plan which is sustainable, which is fair, which is big enough, and which takes into account growth, potential consolidation. I agree with Seth. We want to learn. Part of the reason we picked Newport as our first stop is, number one, because Rogers is high on the list. Number two, we want to learn from what happened at Pell. You know, there are lessons learned there, and we want to learn those lessons so we continue to get better at it. But for me, you know, at the end of the day, it comes down to the simple fact that every generation of Rhode Islanders, every generation of Americans has made sacrifices and investments so the next generation is better off. That's what this is about. Let's come together as a state to make this sort of investment so future generations of Rhode Islanders have a chance and have what they need. And I'm excited. I don't know all the answers. You're going to ask a lot of questions tonight to which we do not have answers. I'm not exactly sure how much money is required. I'm not exactly sure where we're going to get it. I'm not exactly sure the right way to parcel it out. Not exactly sure precisely how to do maintenance and account for consolidation. So we want to spend months engaging Rhode Islanders and coming up with a solution together. But I do know this, doing nothing is not an option, because our kids deserve better, our teachers deserve better, and Rhode Islanders deserve better. So I'm very grateful for all of you for coming out tonight.
I'll defer Rebecca Bowman.
I wanted to say, reiterate that if you build it, they will come. I was on the building committee since 2005 here in Newport, and when we went to build the Pell School, we've already gone up 8 classrooms. We built 2 more during the process, and then we're now 6 short. We had to use our art rooms and our music rooms. And what the state mandated at that time was they took a number like 900 and then divided it by 25 and said, okay, you need this many classrooms. And that doesn't work because we don't divide kids that way. So it's really important that not happen again. Because if you add 5 extra kids in the 4th grade, you have to have an extra classroom. So that's how immediately we were beyond capacity, but we felt maybe we didn't push hard enough against, but really no one realized what the damage that was going to do. So that's just really important that you understand that if you build it, they're going to come, and you got to build it with some room to spare in there. So that's what I want to say.
Any others? Mr. Hanos.
Hi, Dave Hanos, Newport School Committee. I would like to just say a couple things. I think the incentive is important, but Newport's not going to wait for our neighboring communities to come into us. But Treasure Magazine, if you want to incentivize Middletown or another community to come in with us, but we're going to forge forward. We know that our school is in the top 10 or the bottom 10. Whatever you want to say, the school needs to be replaced. It's not worth spending the money. We just put a big roof on it, but that's part of it. Safer, warmer, drier. We had no choice to do that. So that's one of the things we would like to do. Another thing is, when we were dealing with the Pell School, whatever matrix or algorithm that was used, there were some input from the public, and the public was hearing with the layoffs and stuff from my friends that they were wives, spouses, husbands were losing their jobs and couldn't afford to go to private schools. So we defied the statistics, but there was some thought process in it, and that's all. I mean, a lot of my friends are going to be like, oh, we've heard that story 100 times, David, but we're in a different forum now, so it is true, and there is some value to that, especially when you're going to build a new school just like that, and the fact that, you know, the community, there were a lot of people in the community that were wondering what the algorithm was. I know I've spoken to the commissioner about it. He understands that's going to have to be something that the state's really going to have to look at when they start to vet out and give the funding for these schools. Maintenance is huge. I also think that if your town or your city doesn't have a big enough buyer's agent or builder's agent to watch the builders building the school, we're finding some things in the Pell School that weren't necessarily done correctly. A few corners being cut, which we're chasing right now. We're chasing those things down right now to make sure that that's not going to be an ongoing issue with trims blowing off the building. It's just such a new building. So if there were an avenue for a community to reach out, maybe not necessarily have you mandated that someone from the state comes down and oversees the project, but that somebody that come down and visit and help and make sure that these contractors are actually doing exactly what they say, and giving you the quality of materials and things that we really truly need. Again, some of our communities are stressed. They don't have those people. They have good, hard-working people, maybe not have the knowledge to build a brand new, multi-million-dollar school. Those are difficult tasks to hand to someone who's usually in charge of, taking care of your streets and your trees and your parks. So that's one thing that I would hope that the state would offer, is some area of assistance when they're actually going through the building process. Thank you.
That's a really good point. We've learned a little bit from Massachusetts. Massachusetts does really an excellent job at this. They have their school building authority, which they set up a number of years ago, and we're investigating that and learning about that because it's successful. And they, I think, have accounted for a lot of these points. So they created a statewide entity. It does things on a statewide basis, statewide planning, best practices for building and maintenance across the state, group purchasing, which lowers the price for everybody. And so they have found successfully, by being smarter, more efficient, best practices at a state level, cities and towns have saved a lot of money. And the quality is, where it needs to be. So you make good points, and we can follow up with you, but again, in Massachusetts, their experience is similar to what you're saying.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. The task force, this is getting a little into the process, but the task force is working on putting this plan together, and there's several members of that group here tonight, including Chairman Abney. At our next meeting, we're going to have the Massachusetts folks come and elaborate on that a little, but I know, to the governor's point, one of the things that they do in Massachusetts is they have support and requirements for districts in many forms, but one is having on-site project managers that check in and that make sure that things are going the way they're supposed to be going, that they're meeting their specs and that they're on time and on budget and that sort of thing. And so we need to do a little work learning more how they manage that sort of accountability in Massachusetts. We don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel, I think. We can look at what they do and hopefully adopt some of those best practices.
We thought it would be smart to put the chair of the House Finance Committee on our task force, because one thing I know is this is going to cost money, so we wanted Marvin at the table.
If I could, one last thing, I know there are hands over here, but I know it must be very frustrating, the Pell School situation, that you just built this incredible new school and now all of a sudden there's not enough space anymore. From a statewide perspective though, it gives me some hope. I mean, if one of the outcomes of this is that we fix up a bunch of schools around the state and we build, maybe some new schools around the state, and more parents decide that they want to send their kids to public schools as a result of that, that's a really good thing. So hopefully we will be more prepared for it, and we will learn from, some of the lessons of the Pell School, both positive and negative. But if that's been the experience here, that more kids want, and more parents want to send their kids to the public school system because the facility is better, that gives me a lot of hope, actually.
I'm going to go with the younger Miss Jackson.
and I just wanted to tell you guys my experience transferring from Cockshell to Pell, and to be honest, it was kind of overwhelming because I was used to smaller classes, and it went from like 10, 12 kids in a class to like 20. No, yeah, bigger than that, but and I was kind of anxious to be in a class like that because there's a whole bunch of distractions and I couldn't really get my work done without hearing the next person's conversation or the teacher yelling at someone.
Thank you, Felicity. Ms. Sheehan.
Felicity, thank you for saying that. I think it's incredible that you came out and you've got a lot of poise and you make great points, so thank you.
We have an art teacher raising her hand, Ms. Sheehan.
Good evening. My name is Diane Sheehan. I'm the art supervisor and an art educator, and I'm at Pell Elementary teaching art. So I just wanted to piggyback on the Pell School experience because I'm living it with my music and art teachers. Both music teachers have lost their intended music space, so they are traveling. They have been accommodated with the stage area, but it is small. It has impacted our music program, and the same thing with the increased enrollment with the kindergarten classes. The art rooms were being looked at as an additional space. So I'm here to find out your information and what you can do to help us. Our school committee, the community, our administration has been very supportive, but we're still being squeezed. One further note is the same thing at Rogers High School. Right behind you now is part of the music room. The music room has been taken away to accommodate the ALP program. So our one music teacher has a room which literally is a garage, and he calls it the garage band, but it's very small. And so we're experiencing that cramping also here. So thank you for being here and listening to my comments, and anything we can do to engage would be really appreciated. Thank you.
I think there's, in the previous two questions, it's a really important point to make is that we're not just building buildings, we're building buildings that support our instructional mission and our values and what we intend to create in our educational programs. So having facilities to deliver the services that we want to deliver is really important, and designing instructional spaces that are conducive to young people learning and exploring is a really important piece too. The enrollment message is received across all of the comments. I think the treasurer's frame is an important one, that it's hard to anticipate how people are going to react when we build and do great things, but it's a good problem to have. One of the things in the report that we have to take with a grain of salt is they do project an enrollment decline in the report of about 4% statewide. So we have to just view that cautiously. Any kind of enrollment projections we have to view cautiously, and part of a converging set of information, including you know your local economies, you know your local conditions, you know your patterns of families better than we will just by looking at statewide numbers. So we need to be responsive to that.
Others? Mr. Cullen, in the center.
Yeah, let me stand here. Mike Cullen, live in Newport, have a 14-year-old son. Each morning, I pull up in a car directly across from Mr. Hanos's house. At 6:30, I put him on a bus that says Bishop Hendricken along the side, along with 10 other local residents. My wife and I would like to bring Matt Cullen back to Newport schools. We'd like to bring him back to the resources sitting here on Aquidneck Island. I would recommend that the task force, as you're looking at the physical dimensions and variables of a school, also look at the special programs. This island has some very unique programs across the different school districts. Let's start up in Portsmouth. Very unique arts program, very strong focus on physical sciences, a very strong high school math, chemistry, science curriculum. Middletown, terribly unique across the state in being one of the very few districts offering full grades K through 12 Project Lead the Way in a lot of different subjects. Unfortunately, my wife and I don't have access to either of those programs, nor do people in Portsmouth have really quick access to unique Newport programs under Newport Area Career Tech Center, Academy of Information Technology, and Pt1 Cyber. I'm recently retired from IBM, 23 years at IBM, retired from GE, retired from the US Air Force. I'm known as a STEAM advocate, constantly using the hashtag on our 4 different Facebook pages, Giddy Up Rhode Island. I would recommend, again, to the funders, along to our good friend, Rep. Abney, look for ways to allow parents across this island to have more fluid access to the programs. I would also recommend that nobody consider rebuilding Rogers High School on this footprint, because the vast majority of Newport kids over the last 50 years are now sitting very, very close to the Middletown town line. And we know that Middletown does a really, really good job every 5 years of looking at their school needs. And I think they have the available land to do something very, very creative. Thank you.
It's a really important point, and one that we've emphasized repeatedly. We need to think about not just how school districts have operated over the past 100 years, but how they're going to operate for the next 100 years. And in the traditional model, if school districts see themselves that they have to be the all things to all kids all of the time, then when a student wants something that a school district either chooses not to offer or just can't afford to offer, that it's the student who's wrong, and the students need to adapt to what the system offers. And if we're going to be prepared for the next 100 years, we need to flip that and say if our kids, what they want and they need and what our economy wants and needs is right, and we need to organize in order to make that happen, which means that districts need to move from seeing themselves as the sole provider of educational services to being brokers of partnerships. And as you said, we have incredible assets very close by in virtually all of our communities across the state. So if we can see ourselves as brokers, we can figure out the transportation, we can figure out the digital access, we can figure out the ways to get kids to where their course pathways exist, and have it not be a zero-sum game. Everybody can win. Everybody can win. And we're doing things like that with our partnerships with public universities through dual concurrent enrollment, our partnerships through our advanced course network with nonprofit service providers, as well as our private universities, as well as other school districts. When we did our Computer Science for Rhode Island initiative to get computer science in all of our schools in the state, in a fraction of the time as anybody else has done that within 2 years, and we're going to hit that target. One of the main ways we did that was through this partnership model. Different school districts are providing computer science services through the advanced course network to other school districts that just are focusing on other kinds of things. That model has to be in mind as we design our facilities, because some school districts may decide to specialize in world-class arts, advanced art exposure. Others may decide to specialize in world-class STEAM programs. Others may decide to specialize in world-class dual language programs. But we can't all do everything equally well for all of our kids. We have to figure out how to focus, and then we have to figure out how to get kids access to that incredible rich diversity of offerings. And we're on the right path to do that.
Beth Collin, in the center.
Hi, Beth Cullen, Mike's wife, 30 years. I've heard you say that it has to come from the local level, it has to be a district-led change. It will not happen. I need bold leadership from the governor. I need all of you, all of the superintendents, 36 school districts. It has to be, Marvin and I talked today, it has to come from the top. It's not, just like a charter school authorization. It won't happen. I went through 2 rounds of charter school authorizations. It will not happen at the local district. The State Board of Education is very political, and it's affected by those at the local districts. We need bold leadership from the top. Massachusetts in 1993 chose that path. Governor Wells led the charge, and that's why they're doing so much better. Bold leadership from the top.
So we're very much trying to incentivize the kind of programmatic issues. And I don't want to get us too far away from the facility conversation, but facility and program are very aligned to each other. We've introduced pathway designations that, starting with this year's 9th graders, will go on students' transcripts and diplomas. And there's been incredible excitement by all of our school districts about building those kinds of pathways for students. And we're launching 6 pathways in public service, and business and industry, and STEAM and STEM, and those kinds of things. As schools get excited about that, they're going to quickly realize that they're going to have to move in this kind of direction because they're not going to be able to offer those things. And we're going to incentivize that through our accountability system. Schools that offer those kinds of experiences to kids will get points in their accountability designations. And we're doing this right now in career education. Since 2012, there has been open enrollment where any student in the state can go to any other career education program in the state, driven by parent and student demand, not driven by anyone else's decision-making process at the local level. And what we've seen, not only are students going to other programs, but just as important, the programs that are experiencing the potential to lose students are actually investing in their own facilities and in their own programs. So we're going to see an explosion of offerings at the local level with state leadership, but driven by district-led innovation. And I see the skepticism, but we can show you numbers where our offerings have jumped close to 100% over the past 2 to 3 years.
If I could just on facilities specifically, I think the balance of direction from the state level versus local control is going to be something that's, we have to think very hard about how to get that right when it comes to the school facilities conversation. And I think we've already heard tonight some examples of what can go wrong if you go too far in one direction or the other, right? On the one hand, if there's going to be a lot of state money, there already is a lot of state money going to school facilities, if there's going to be even more state money going into facilities, and we have good information about where the greatest needs are, I think it's appropriate for the state to be giving districts some direction of, okay, if you want X amount of state money, here's the direction we want you to go. It'll mean safe, warm, and dry, it'll mean STEAM, it'll mean things like that. On the other hand, I think what we've heard from the health school stories are, perhaps an example of the state being a little too prescriptive. And maybe, if the state had been a little more flexible around the amount of funding that would have been given if the school had been bigger, we would have avoided some of the problems we face now. So that gets to an example of potentially that's an example where, the district may have known a little better than the state did. And so that's, I think, the balance that we need to try to strike here. And part of why we want to have these forums is to make sure that we get that right. So when it comes to, if we're going to be spending more on school facilities in one way or another, to what extent that should be district directed, to what extent it should be state directed, and specifically like item by item where that balance should be, that's the kind of conversation we need to have, and I think that's the feedback that we need. And if I could, related topic, one last thing on STEAM. When this report came out, one of the things that shocked me the most, 3/4 of the high schools in this state don't have science labs. 3/4 of the high schools. They have rooms where science is taught, but that's not the same thing as having a real science lab. And how are we going to prepare kids for the 21st century workforce when we don't have real science labs in 3/4 of the high schools in the state? So,
we have.
Yeah, you do here. That's good. But when you started talking about STEAM, I thought I would throw that out there because we talk about 21st century learning in a general way. That's a specific example of something that we need to do better.
Right.
We have a hand, okay, I'm gonna check Ms. Jackson to see if others want to speak. Anyone? All right, new hands. Okay, Louisa Boatwright.
Hi, Louise Boatwright, Newport resident. Going back to Pell, I was on the facility subcommittee at the time as well, and I wanted to bring up three things. One is we did, as local residents, have a pretty good pulse that people would come back. So we did ask that they consider, and I think this should be in your documents, but to have an expansion plan. It is risky to overbuild. You don't want to do that, but you should always plan for that and know how you can expand as a sort of risk reducer. The second thing I wanted to bring up is one of the reasons why we consolidated everybody into the Pell School into one building, which was a big change for Newport, was to get all the resources in one place. And now we're looking at what do we do, which I don't know what you put in the report for Pell School actually, because I haven't seen it. I know it's safe and dry, but I don't know for all of the classes that are outside if they are. But I do think that keeping it all together so you don't have to have buses go elsewhere, it keeps all the resources, the behavioralists, the social workers, the nurses. So what the issue I look at now is if we move to another building that's not on the same campus, and there is still land near Pell, but there needs to be a plan that accommodates that, because that was critical in the decision-making of putting them all together. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Ms. Mueller, Kendra. PTO Pell President.
I just wanted to build real quick on that one comment. I had another comment. My daughter's at Pell in 3rd grade, and one thing I love about Pell is she's with so many kids that we never would have met if we were in our community school. I mean, she has so many friends from all parts of this town we never would have ever met. So I think keeping the kids together is a great idea. I would hate to see them split up. And I think going forward also, we need to look at the health of private and parochial schools. Because I think we learned with Clooney closing, those kids have to go somewhere. And if you're one child from a tipping point, a school closing is a big deal. Even if you only get one child from that school, kindergarten and Pell only means one more child to lose an arm. So one kid can make a huge impact. I know it doesn't seem like it can, but it really can. So I think looking forward, maybe take into effect how the parochial schools are doing, how the private schools are doing. Because if they're closing, 300 kids are going to have to go somewhere, and they might end up at your school again, and you got to put them someplace.
Well, I think the point that was just made, but you said it really well, you have a good pulse that people will come back. And it's not a formula so much as it is a pulse, and there's a lot of factors, including what you just said, which is how the parochial schools in that community are doing. There's 100 different factors, and I agree with you guys.
Mr. Nurston, Hank Nurston.
Excuse me, my name is Hank Nisker, and I'm a member of the community. I also had the honor to be a facilitator to Newport Public Schools and their 5-year strategic plan. And in that plan, I was kind of going into, I've done a lot of this kind of work for nonprofits and municipalities and so forth. About half of them never really worked. The strategies never really completed and so forth. And in this case, and I had wasn't sure whether it was going to work or not, I was astounded. I had all kinds of preconceptions about disinterested teachers and kind of remote school committee members, and it was just the opposite. And I wanted to just share some of the things that came out of that I think are really quite relevant. I just didn't think about it until I started hearing the comments. One was from the students in the schools, who, especially Rogers, and we were interviewed too, and they said, the school's kind of dilapidated, and that kind of tells us how the community feels about us. And it's